Up next, we have Nancy Parks. Nancy Parks is an Associate Provost of Student Services and the Director of Advising and Assessment at Pierpont Community and Technical College. She will share honoring all the credits, the BOG degree at Pierpont CTC.
My name is Nancy. I'm at Pierpont, and I've been here and at Fairmont State for many years. And in 2011, they came to me and said, "Hey, we're separating out all of the Pierpont and Fairmont State programs, and you're going to take over the Board of Governors." And I'm like, "Oh crap! You've got to be kidding me." I think my words were a little more choice than that. And the Board of Governors degree is, as most of you I'm sure know, especially those of you from community colleges, is the adult degree completion program that was formed by the state back in the early 70s. So it's now really near and dear to my heart because it came in with a lot of people turned their noses up at it, thought, oh, that's just the degree that you get when you can't get anything else. And sometimes that's true. But that still has a lot of positive things for it. So that first slide, that's a very self-deprecating 40-year snapshot, just to illustrate that a lot can happen between high school graduation and midlife. And some of us were lucky enough to graduate high school, go to college, do things in an even keel. And there are lots of people out there who were, I'll just speak for myself, smarter than me, way more talented than me, who just didn't have that same opportunity. And a member of my own family, in fact, was one of those people, and we'll get to her in just a second. But the Board of Governors degree allows people to use all college credit previously earned in any other program and apply them to this, for lack of a better term, kind of a casserole. And if somebody could, I'm going to ask the tech person to advance this. Thank you. So it is what I refer to as kind of like an academic insurance policy. And it's very popular now with reverse transfer. And what I mean by that is students who started at a university, never planned on going to a community college or getting an associate degree, but life happened. They got a chance for a job, they moved, they joined the military, they met up with a man, they met up with a woman, they had kids sooner than they thought. Something interrupted their college experience, or they were asked to leave the college. And I talk to a lot of these students. They started out college and they got really involved in a fraternity. They played sports. They had a great time. And they just didn't progress to graduate. And believe it or not, a lot of the students that I work with it's their big secret. It's their big shameful secret that they didn't graduate because they were in university for so long that people just assumed that they did. Or they told their family, oh, I don't want to go to commencement, let's just skip it. And I talked to one grown man who said, I don't have to participate in commencement, do I? Because my mother doesn't know I never graduated. So there are actually stories out there like that, but it's a well-deserved reward for people with some college, no degree. And if we could go ahead and slide on over, you'll know it too as the kind of like little sister of the Regents degree. Here's what it is. And the people, my colleagues on there from community colleges, they'll know this already. It's a 60 credit hour requirement, just 15 credits of general education. So that's math, 3 credits of math, or excuse me, 3 credits of English, 3 credits of social science, 3 credits of computer literacy, and then 6 credits of math and or science. Now, when I say that a student can start at degree attainment status without knowing it, I have plenty of real life stories for this. For example, A few years ago, an older woman came into the front counter of our admission station. She came in to fill out an application to come to Pierpont. They sent her back to my office and we're talking. And I said, well, have you been to credit college before? And she said, oh, yes, I started out at Fairmont State. I was there several years ago. And at that time, Pierpont and Fairmont State, and some of you may know our storied history, we were combined administratively to some degree, and a lot of our student services and technology overlaps. So at that time, I had all of her information in our shared database. So I looked her up, and she'd been at Fairmont State for quite a while. And I was able to see that all of the credits that she had completed at Fairmont State already satisfied the degree requirements for the Board of Governors degree. So within 10 minutes, she came into the advising center as an applicant to be a returning student for the fall semester. And she left with a completed graduation application to graduate that same semester with the Board of Governors degree. She's crying. She's texting her sister. I would love to show you the pictures I took at commencement, but I was kind of under the gun and I didn't get all the permissions I need to share the pictures. But it was just so heartening. She didn't have any classes through Pierpont, exclusively Pierpont, but when we were a shared experience. We have opened up the program, and there's a history behind that, and I'll explain, but we've opened up the program to allow people to graduate from us with that degree without having taken Pierpont courses. And that's something that people either love or people absolutely hate. And I can understand both perspectives really clearly. But before we get into that, I also want to mention that the Board of Governors degree, and again, this isn't just at Pierpont, this is at all the community colleges. If a student comes in fresh off the street and says, you know, as long as they've been out of high school for a year, because we want them to be able to explore other programs as well. But if they come in off the street and say, you know what, I really want a degree, but I don't want to commit to a major, and the Board of Governors, 45 of those hours are whatever they want to take, or from where, and we'll get into that in a second. It's also a good place for people who just want a degree but don't want to commit to the exact prescriptive parts of a major. But that student came in, applied to Pierpont, 10 minutes later, filled out a graduation application, didn't have to take any more courses, and she left with a degree, which is all she wanted to do anyway, was just finish that degree. And if we could have the next slide, please. And Julie, I hate to sound so bossy, I hate that. But again, it's the little sister to the RBA, and you universities, you have an RBA. And the very first reverse transfer student that Pierpont accepted was a woman who worked for WVU and was in your RBA program. But she wanted to retire. And she wanted to have that degree in hand by the time she retired. And she called and she was just crying, and she said, and literally kind of crying, it was just like, I put this degree off for so long, and now I still have some time left before I can complete the bachelor's degree version. Is there anything that a community college can do for me? And it was really that student need that said, gee, I really don't think so. You're not a student here, but let me check. And at the time, we had a president, Doreen Larson. In fact, I think she might even be doing some stuff with you all at some point, or she was big into workforce, huge into adult learning, and she was very supportive. And I explained the situation, and she was like, yeah, okay. And there had been a student about a month earlier who had been a Fairmont State student years ago, needed a degree quickly so he could get paid for his wrestling coach job in New Jersey. And he had been a Fairmont State student and didn't graduate, one of those hung around for 6 years, dated every freshman, never graduated, and just thought, oh crap, this has really caught up with me now. And the president gave us permission to wrap up his credits and issue the degree to him. So it kind of started out small and then it's grown. Now the difference, next slide, please, with the other colleges and Pierpont, and again, I get it if you don't want to do it. I totally get it. We don't have an institutional residency requirement. And we will accept any college credits that have been vetted through ACE. And if you've heard of Sophia and you love it or hate it, you love it or hate it. The reason I love Sophia is that during what I call the social justice summer of 2020, things were shut down for pandemic. There were laid off, taxi driver, Uber drivers, airports were shut down, restaurants, bartenders, all these people weren't working. And Sophia, which has kind of become more popular now than Straighter Line, they went to all those major employers. And I don't know this from Sophia. I know this from the students who benefited from that. They went to all those major employers like the airlines and they said, what kind of training do your employees need? And we'll develop those credits and we'll give those courses away. No charge, July 2020. So all these people who'd never been to college before, or who had been and abandoned it, who now couldn't, do anything because their bars were closed, their restaurants were closed, took advantage of this training through their employers and completed all these college credits. If you're not familiar with them, and depending on how friendly your registrar's office is, there are so many general education courses run through Sophia that are exact course substitutes in transfer work because they meet that 70% rule of student learning outcomes. So we will accept those. I understand that some colleges don't, and that's absolutely, the right decision for your institution. And we always tell students, if you plan to take this degree and pursue it further with a bachelor's or go back to your home institution, you'll want to make sure that they accept these. And some students are like, I don't care, I just want this degree in hand and I'll worry about it later. But we do always encourage them to work with the end in mind. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So we get a lot of students who transfer and graduate with this degree, even from inside Pierpont. And some of the reasons are when they have swum around the majors too long and run out of financial aid eligibility. I had an advisor just say yesterday, hey, could you go in and look at so-and-so and see if she's good for the BOG? And because the requirements are only, 60, we're a community college, so we only have about 60 to 65 credits per program anyway. It's a real quick audit. But if a student runs out of financial aid, we can, if they meet the qualifications, wrap them up with that Board of Governors degree, and then they become second degree eligible to pursue their original plan. And sometimes they just run out of steam. They run out of interest. Or in many cases, a job comes up that requires a degree. When I first got involved in the program, a big cohort of our folks were working in a local industry. And they had me come in and do degree audits because most of them had started out at a university to see how close they were. And then we delivered programming to fill in that gap. And there was one man there who only needed, I tell you, 2 classes to graduate. And he just didn't want to take them, And about 5 years after the fact, he emailed me and he said, hey, can you tell me again what I need to finish that degree? And I said, the same 2 classes you needed the last time we talked. And I said, you need X and Y. And he said, I'm ready to do it. And I said, I just got to know, why are you ready now? And he said, there was a job that came open. He said that I've been doing for years. I applied for it and I didn't get it. And they pulled me aside and told me, we really wanted to hire you, but the other candidate had a degree. He didn't have the experience, but he had the degree. And they're a Fortune 100 company, and they have to have a certain percentage of their employees degree holders. And he said, I can't believe I lost out on that job to a 26-year-old kid. He said, I just can't believe it. And until then, he'd never taken a class through Pierpont, but he did finish up with us. So we have some internal transfers from program to program. But then in the next slide, this is the big big group of people. This is why I wanted to talk to the university people in advising today. I've already gotten Glenville. I don't know if anybody is here today from Glenville. They created their own Associate of Science. They've kind of created their own institutional BOG, but it's also maybe a little bit more prescriptive. So they've had occasion where they've had some students that are at risk of leaving the institution, and they don't want them to leave empty-handed. So their advising is helping the students get connected with a community college that can offer them something so that they leave with something in hand. And I like this to be kind of like a classic Stephen Covey win-win kind of thing. That college, the four-year college, may not get to claim that graduate, that student as their own graduate, but if they can get them hooked up with something, some kind of credential that they can claim, that we create another column, in the win column. And I'm eager to hear from you all, because I know in my head, a lot of the BOG students come. If you remember when I cited what the gen ed requirements were, it was 6 credits of math and or science. And many of the students who come to us from that university experience are really attracted to that and or in math and or science. And for some reason, math is still a stumbling block for a lot of students. But if they've taken anatomy and biology or whatever, that they can complete this degree through science requirements, they're just as happy to do that. And I guess my rhetorical big picture question is, if you're teaching at the four-year school, can you think of any profile of student or any major in which the reverse transfer program of the Board of Governors degree would be helpful for your students? And I don't necessarily mean as an end-all, be done, wash your hands of it, but would it serve as a sufficient reward to reinvigorate them and keep their momentum high to come back to you to finish? There might be financial aid implications of, will that enhance them if they come back with a degree in hand? Would it hamper them to any degree? Those are the things that need to be considered. But I do know that many of the students who complete the BOG will keep trucking forward and then go back to their home institution and complete that Regents degree, which is a lot more prescriptive in what it requires. But they have that BOG in hand. And Julie, if we can go to the next one, because these things always go so much faster than I think. Now, we charge them just beginning this fall, the new student fee that we charge everybody. Even if they come in with all credits completed through another school, it's $130. It really helps enhance our institutional demographic profile because we get a lot of students of color. I got to tell you, there's nothing that warms my heart more than working with a Black woman in IT, because just it really enhances our profile. Sometimes the Board of Governors students, because it draws in everybody from across the nation, really does enhance our profile. And I've got, some of these people who come back as adults are so pissed off at higher ed in general. Guys who are recruited to play football and then get an injury, and they said then nobody's interested in them, and they just kind of floundered away at college. Some people are really out there carrying big chips on their shoulder because they go into go into college. They were heavily recruited to do something, and then when that didn't pan out, they just felt like the people who brought them into college abandoned them and walked away. And then they are like, I went to 3 colleges. Can you look at my stuff? Can we make something of this? And that's what we try to do, is make something of that. And if we could just have the next slide, please. And people have already put so much time and money into college, and people say, don't you? And most colleges, they'll have like a 3-credit residency requirement. And this is just my opinion. My opinion is, if it's offered as a service, then it's not seen as like, just churning out the degree. they've got an indicator on their transcript that all the work was done by transfer. It is incredibly popular with these online colleges. Like we've got an articulation now with Western Governors, and that's where a lot of my students go. But the slide that Julie was kind enough to put up, that shows our summer demographics. This is from a faculty newsletter of graduates in 2021, that there were 23 BOG grads, and of that whole profile that summer, we only had 4 students who weren't white, and 3 of those 4 came from the Board of Governors degree program. So we can go to the next slide.
Nancy.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, we're done. I'm sorry.
No, you have about 2 minutes,
Okay.
but I think Taylor Richmond had his hand raised, so I wanted to see if you wanted to answer his question before we run out of time.
Of course, of course.
Hi, Nancy. Taylor Richmond,
Hi.
Associate Registrar for Transfer at WVU. So regarding the residency requirement, or the, I guess, lack thereof,
Right.
your degree, I'm curious if there's been, what the reaction from HEPC was regarding their Series 50 in terms of 4-year schools doing the reverse transfer, because part of that series states that it has to go to the 2-year school that has the most hours. So I was just curious how you all are balancing that in terms of your working with other institutions, or is it something that has been thought through?
I know, the Board of Governors and RBA folks, the advisors, we meet twice a year with the Vice Chancellor. So it was Mark Stotler, then it was Nikki Bryant, and now it's Corley Dennison is back in the game. They like it. They really like it. And I'm telling you what, when I work with a student that they've got, and especially where they're from, and most of my students, they're coming from the 4-year. I'm not getting people leaving other community colleges, because every community college has their own gig. And I think we all do a nice job of supporting each other. You started there, they're going to take care of you, finish up there. But if we would see, a predominant community college, we would make sure to refer them back there. I know probably the 4-year college that I work the most with now is Fairmont State, just because of our former connection and the working relationships there. But the state, the HEPC site keeps a website up for adult students and completers of the BOG and RBA. So there are our 2 featured students so far. The woman on the right went back to Fairmont State and finished her degree. The guy on the left with the beard had worked in IT, and those guys have great jobs until they want to move into management, and then they need the degree. And that was his story. And then the next slide just shows the quote from Nikolai, the guy before, who had said in his email, "You can use my name, face, and story anywhere." But he said, "This is one of the biggest personal achievements in my life, second to becoming a US citizen." And that was pretty cool. And then the next slide, and I know we're almost done. Where do the grads go? They go back to their same job, sometimes with a raise, sometimes with a promotion, back to their original 4-year degree. I'm telling you what, folks, we got to watch out for Western Governors, Excelsior, UMPI. They graduate students 8 times a year. They turn over their terms. It's what people want. They go to the party store to buy supplies. Or look at this next slide. I like this one. They update their LinkedIn page and they add Pierpont to it. Now, some of them, just like regular students, they don't want to admit they started out at community college. And some people are like, "I am all about this. I am all about this. I'm all about what you do, how it's going." It's largely word of mouth. And I'm not saying that it's for everybody. And, 2 weeks from now, when I'm doing these degree audits, I could be tearing my hair out. But we see it at this point as like a mission. But if we go to the next slide, I really want to serve more students in West Virginia.
Nancy.
So the people who've dropped out of your college, if you've got some kind of effort where you're in contact with them, what are you doing now? Hey, you might be eligible for this associate degree. I know it's not what you wanted, but it's something in hand. And then you guys could be the big saviors of like, hey, they told me about this and I didn't even know it existed.
Nancy,
and then, yes.
we are out of time, dear.
I'm sorry, dear. I'm so sorry.
You're okay.
I get a little cranked up. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy.